It's 9:30 on Thursday, the 22nd of November. Good morning and welcome to Analysis. In the programme this morning, running a help desk, we see what's on offer at ICC 90. Is a paperless office on the way? Computer graphics, an archaeological glimpse of the past and a sighting for the future. In Face to Face this week, Mike Dash, magazine's editor of UK Press Gazette. Is it recession time for computer publishing? And in Benchmarks, David Biggins eyes up his usual duo of machines. But first, the news headlines.
A new standard for the multimedia world. 5 suppliers band together. Following on from last week's duopoly review, it's green paper time for the satellite communications industry. And wireless banking, Amex, Barclays and NatWest trade by radio.
IBM, Microsoft, Tandy, Fujitsu and Zenith are clubbing together to form a worldwide multimedia standard based upon a version of Microsoft's Windows called Windows M. Products supporting the standard will be available next year, and you'll be able to play around with text, animation, graphics and audio sequences by calling up sound and image from a CD-ROM drive. If you'd like a taste of what the technology can do, IBM announced a new version of its Storyboard package on Tuesday. Storyboard Live runs on a PC and brings together drawings, animation, motion video and sound. You can buy it next month from your local IBM dealer when it will cost around £400.
The European Commission has unveiled its long-awaited green paper proposing liberalisation of the satellite communications market. The national telecom operators will lose the monopoly they now enjoy, selling two-way satellite dishes and access to satellite transmission. The paper should also stimulate 2 service markets, television broadcasting and the sale of data services for multinational companies. Private satellite networks will be able to carry voice and data, but only data can be sent on the public network.
PACNEC's laughing all the way to the bank as Barclays, NatWest and Amex trial its data communications service. Barclays was the last to sign up on Tuesday. All 3 will now use the wireless system to speed up card transactions from restaurants, shops and garages. Barclays took up the system after trial at W.H. Smith's Do-It-All store in Swindon. PACNEC claims the speed of each card transaction fell from over 45 seconds to less than 6. Chris Slade talked to PACNEC Managing Director Neil Montefiore.
PACNET is the world's first public data communication network that's accessed by radio. We use small subscriber radio units to allow firstly data applications to access public and private data networks in the UK. Our system is better mainly because of its 3 fundamental benefits, which is its speed of access to a data communications network, the cost of access is much cheaper than dial-up or leased lines, and the flexibility. You can literally pick up the radio unit and move it to any location you wish without having to arrange with a third party for installation. The subscriber radios are in the control of the customer, and they can hold a stock and replace from that stock themselves. Each base station is duplicated and all communication lines are resilient.
So what sort of applications does this have in general? How can it be used?
Okay, like all data communication networks, it's applications that are the essence of it, and we see 3 major areas. One is financial and retail, such as the point-of-sale applications that we've shown here today. The other is telemetry and monitoring applications, such as home security, intruder alarms and so forth. And the final area is messaging, just simple 2-way messaging between either terminals or mainframe computers. Well,
we're standing next to an example of the system, a credit authorization terminal. Can you just give us a quick demonstration of how this works?
Certainly. Enter a sale. The machine asks you to wipe a card. Enter the amount of the sale. In this case, we'll put £5. And by the time the customer has signed the slip, you'll see the authorization has been received back. It takes about 5 to 6 seconds.
The European Investment Bank is lending 80 million EQs to Hungary so it can build a national telecommunications network. The 15-year loan is the first of its kind and will also fund a 10-year programme to bring Hungarian telecoms up to Western standards by introducing digital exchanges, optical fibre and microwave radio links. Stage 1 should be completed by 1993.
It's still doom and gloom on the employment front. More jobs are going in the north of England. Systems house SEMA has axed 8 more jobs at its software engineering centre near Manchester. 80 jobs went earlier this year. And Olivetti wants to lose 7,000 of its 55,000 staff. That's 1 in 8. The company has still to say where the cuts will be. International Software's Information Centre Conference, ICC 90, made its debut this week. PC strategy was the theme. How do you manage personal computers so they're a genuine asset to the company? International Software also brought major software suppliers together with their customers. Ken Young asked Steve Moore about the thinking behind this week's event.
The conference and the seminar series is aimed at the strategic direction of PC software. It's really aimed at bringing the information center managers and the people that are employed in that area together with the leading software publishers in the UK.
Are companies taking the idea of information centres seriously?
The information center has been around for at least 5 years, 6 years, and in that time I think it tends to increase with the number of PCs that are used in a corporate customer.
What are the key concerns of customers that you're dealing with then?
Two concerns. One, the maintenance of the existing installed base, the number of PCs they have and the number of applications that are available. And then secondly, the changing environment that they're in, the move of technology, the platforms, operating systems and application software that is available today.
One product on show to help the information centre was Couldwell.
I think the major issues that companies face now is probably just the sheer number of PCs that exist within the organisation, and then the variety and complexity of questions that actually start now to come into the information centre for them to actually answer.
So what is Couldwell?
Well, Couldwell is a package designed to actually help the information centres in that work.
What makes it unique?
I think the difference with Couldwell is that Couldwell is born out of the emergence of the information centre. It's a package that's been designed specifically to help them do their work and has been written by information centre professionals. So it's people who are actually stuck doing the job and not finding a software solution have actually come out and written this package specifically for the information centre. There's really 4 parts to Couldwell. Firstly, it provides an asset management facility for the corporation to keep a full inventory of all the equipment and software that the corporation's actually using. It then provides a full help desk function that's dynamically linked into that inventory so that any calls coming into the information centre can all be logged and then immediately allocated out to the particular specialists that will actually be able to answer that problem. The third part is to then keep a knowledge base of all the solutions that have actually been found. As we go through that help call process, obviously there's a lot of analysis to solve particularly difficult problems, and we don't really want to reinvent the wheel each time in order to answer those. So there's a full knowledge base that the support staff can actually look through to find a solution that already exists to a particular problem. The fourth part is then, because we've have all our inventory information there and all the call information there, is that it actually provides good trend analysis and good statistical information so that the information centre can actually, for once, have some data to work out what it is they should actually be providing next, and also some way of measuring how successful any action that they actually take is. We have about 110 users now, most of those in the UK, though we've recently introduced the package into Germany and France, where it's beginning to sell out there. It's typically large corporations across all industry sectors and also government departments as well. It's really any company with more than 100 PCs can take advantage of this product. Typically large insurance companies like Prudential Assurance and consultancies like Pricewaterhouse.
How are you planning to develop it from here?
The information centre is ever changing. As you know, the software is always changing and the hardware as well. And the information centre itself, being relatively new, is by no means a sort of a truly well-defined department, so it constantly enhances what it's doing. We have a user group made up of all the members that actually have the products in place. We get a lot of feedback that way, and it's also going back out and then talking about individual case studies. That's where the ideas come from. It's our job then to turn that into actual product and put that back out into the marketplace.
And what's the typical cost of an installation?
Right, the retail price of Couldwell is £8,000, and that's for an unlimited number of users. So it's a network piece of software, and it's as many users as you can actually get into the system.
ImageSolve showed a solution for all that old-fashioned paper.
I'm going to go and file some documents. I'm going to be using the scanner here that you see in front of you to scan the documents. I'm going to tell the system now to actually start scanning, and an instruction will be sent across to the scanner, and what you'll see is that documents will start going through the scanner at a rated speed of about 20 pages per minute. What is happening right now is that the images that are being scanned are being displayed, but as you see them being displayed dynamically, the images are being sent across the network and are going to the file server across the network on the left-hand side. One of the things you would have to do is to index that document image. It would be critical at this point. What do I mean by indexing? Well, typically in an accounts payable department, I might pick out the supplier number, I might pick out the type of document, and I might pick out some other information that I would use at a later stage to retrieve that document image by. What is happening is when it's being scanned and it's being written across the network, we will make a decision at some stage to write the document image to an optical disc technology that I have in my pocket here. This is an optical disc, and I can get something in the region of 20,000 document images onto this write once, read many times optical disc, like so. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go in and retrieve a document image to show you at any point in the network how you would get a document out of the system. A typical example here would be an accounts payable department where in fact I know a supplier. I'm going to go into my system and I'm going to go in fact by supplier, and I'm going to key a supplier, and at this point here the system will go away, it will search the database on the file server, and it comes up with 2 references to that supplier. It actually displays for me some dates, and it displays for me the document type. This is all information that I will have keyed based upon the document image at the time that I enter the document into the system. I'm going to select that particular one. It'll give me further information. It's now gone across the network, it's gone across to the optical disc across the network, and it's now displayed that document image.
What's the general awareness of document image processing actually like?
I think at the moment the level of awareness of document image processing is that it's very much an embryonic industry. Most people see and most people are aware that document image processing exists. Certainly most corporate organisations. There's a want and a desire to try the technology. It's seen as being a technology that will in many respects add value to the organisation and add value to many of the things that they're doing at the moment.
How big would you say the market is?
We anticipate at the moment that it's still in its very early stages, but we reckon it's about £100 million plus. We reckon it's growing at approximately 100% a year at the moment.
So a number of products there really, sort of the help desk and document image processing, everything else. Is a help desk or information centre really a clearly defined market?
Well, that was one thing that was hard to ascertain. I asked Steve Moore, who you saw interviewed at the beginning there, for real numbers, and he was very, very cagey, but he said around about the 1,000 mark, so it's plus or minus a few hundred, I suppose, in that figure. But definitely the quality of the people there, very much blue chip companies. You get the feeling that larger companies are taking it seriously and they are setting up help desks. So it is a defined market that's definitely growing, but how big it is open to anyone's guess, really.
The help desk or information centre is very much a traditional idea in a mainframe environment. Presumably the desks now are very much PC oriented, sort of PC help desks, are they?
Yeah, I think that's partly why it's grown so much, is that with all these PCs around, you just have to support users, and therefore, you know, the need has become identified, and with products such as the ones we've seen here, there's a clear market and a clear need to serve users.
If there is a clear need though, did it attract the users at the show itself?
Well, at first it seemed very quiet, but the reason for that was that most of them were in the conference part, and after we'd been there a few hours, suddenly the floors were covered in the exhibition areas with people running around all over the place, so we were pretty impressed. It's a small exhibition, but for a small market it was well attended.
What about document image processing then? Is that a niche that people have realised is there?
Well, I think as he was saying there, they're letting people have a look at it, they're developing the awareness. The reality is that it's between a paper-based system and EDI, and is that really appropriate? Some people want to go straight to EDI, others will see it as a useful thing to do because you can lock away your paper somewhere in the Hebrides and have it on a disk-based system, optical disc. But in reality, personally, I can only see it as a niche area. I can't really see the benefit because you can't, on the whole, you can't manipulate that information. It's nice to have it in that storage medium, but you can't do anything with it unless it's all broken down into units, and in that case, why not go to EDI?
All these different technologies, and do you see finally a bit of a convergence between comms and computing?
Well, we were very impressed with the Couldwell product, and it seems logical that if you've got a help desk for voice for the telephone users as well, why not combine the two? And they showed some interest in that, but at the moment it doesn't seem like anyone's really done that. So in a sense it's like a litmus test of the convergence of computing and telecoms. If it isn't being done at the sharp end, how much is really going on? The real need is for the PC users, and the voice users usually can wait and still fumble with their telephone handsets and not really know how to use them.
Still a lot of disparate elements that no one really is wanting to bring together in a way.
Yeah,
It's taken a while to go then.
Yeah, I think it'll come further down the road when we see products like the ones we've seen in other programs, which actually bring together the PC and the telephone in one unit.
How long are we off that then, do you reckon?
5 years.
God, we'll be dead by then. Now it's time for our contribution for the British Computer Society. This week, Chief Executive Jim Brooks is here to talk about the BCS Awards, now in their 18th year.
Good morning. This morning I'm talking about the BCS Awards scheme. But before I start, I've been asked to draw your attention to an additional Computer Channel programme, which will be going out on Wednesday the 28th of November, immediately after your normal scheduled programme for the day. This additional programme is on the BCS Professional Development Scheme. Now to return to the awards. Last week, His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, patron of the British Computer Society, presented the BCS Awards to this year's winners of our annual competition, which aims to highlight and promote the very best of information technology developments and its application across the UK. The first award was made back in 1973, sponsored by John Plain Limited, and was presented to Professor Tom Kilburn for the pioneering work carried out on computer system design and construction by his team at Manchester University. The awards are now sponsored by a cross-section of companies from all sectors of information technology: computer suppliers, software and systems houses, and telecommunications suppliers. The 60 or so projects which are nominated for an award each year are first scrutinised by referees with specific expertise in the main technical areas which are addressed by each project. Then each project is visited in situ by a team selected from our preliminary investigating panel. This panel then meets, armed with both referee and site visit reports, and select around 10 finalists to go before a final judging panel. This latter panel consists of a selection of senior executives from the IT industry, from major IT users, and 1 or 2 past winners of the award. From the 10 or so finalists, this panel then selects a winner in each of 3 general categories: technical impact, general application, and the application contributing most to social benefit. All of the finalists demonstrate their projects at a one-day public event in London, and it is at this event that the ultimate winners are announced. Over the past years, this rigorous process has produced, as winners, a number of notably successful projects, including the ICL Content Addressable File Store, CAFS, the Transputer, a talking terminal for the blind, a welfare benefits scheme in Wales, the design system for the Giotto spacecraft, the BBC Doomsday Project, and many others. Again this year we had an excellent selection of 11 finalists who were presented with BCS medals by the Duke of Kent at a public event at the Waldorf. The ultimate winner in the technical category is University College London's ImageMaker, a system for generating very high quality, 3-dimensional video images of inaccessible areas, such as northern Iraq, from satellite pictures. The winner in the social benefit category is the RNIB Electronic Daily Newspapers for the Blind. Here the text of the newspaper is broadcast via Aircall's teletext service to the PC in the home or the library, where the text is stored and can subsequently be enlarged, braille printed, or read out through a synthesizer. The project initially distributes The Guardian, but this will be followed by The Times, the Financial Times, and The Independent. In the applications category, we have joint winners. One, a very large project, Optics, has been produced jointly by the Patent Office and Computer Sciences Company Limited. Optics automates the search over 200 million patent records arising from 240,000 applications per year and provides a response within 1 to 10 seconds. And this significantly improves the productivity and the responsiveness of the Patent Office. The other winner in this category is at the other end of the scale in size and is the Satellite Imaging Acquisition and Processing System produced by Dartcom. This offers organisations with limited budgets, such as schools, a very low-cost PC-based system which produces high-resolution images from satellite transmissions and which can then be used, for example, in teaching geography or how weather patterns change. Now, if you are aware of an exciting and innovative project which you think ought to be considered for an award in 1991, please contact Francis Evans Awards Administrator, British Computer Society, 13 Mansfield Street, London, W1M OBP.
Jim Brooks there of the BCS. There'll be more from the BCS next Wednesday with a special programme about its professional development scheme. More on that later. Well, Raycall Chairman Sir Ernest Harrison said this week he'll lead a management buyout of the group's electronics division, but only if it continues as a quoted company. The Raycall Group is being split up into 3 logical parts so it can fight off any hostile takeover bids. The other 2 divisions will soon be up for sale as separate companies. Raycall Telecom, thought to be worth £2.2 billion, and Raycall Chubb, worth a more conservative £400 million.
The Audit Commission has warned that over the next couple of years, local authorities will throw away £300 million on badly designed systems which the authorities either don't need or fail to offer value for money. In its information paper called Acquiring IT, the Commission cries out for authorities to create a clear management structure to monitor and control the systems being installed. Unless they do, it says, the systems they do buy will be incompatible and fail to do the job in hand.
Deregulation fever is spreading. Prime Minister Bob Hawke has announced plans to open up Australia's telecoms market to what he calls unlimited competition by 1997. Compared with Europe, Australia has attracted a lot of criticism for moving too slowly towards an open telecoms policy.
If you thought Scarborough was a long way to go to the seaside, imagine how companies felt there when a fire cut off the town from the outside world for several days. The fire at BT's main exchange destroyed Megastream and Killerstream data cables, as well as thousands of business and residential lines. A number of companies on the 0723 exchange were out of action for up to 5 days, with some only having their lines restored on Monday. BT's disaster planning service has already been heavily criticised by local councillors, but BT has so far ignored pleas for compensation.
The Polish PTT has postponed its decision to grant cellular telephone licences. A decision is now not expected until the end of this year or early next year. Some 19 consortia have bid for the licence, which will operate a cellular network based on the Scandinavian NMT 450 standard. 5 contenders are now being considered.
Well, it's difficult to picture an ancient building once it's been reduced to a pile of bricks. So when Channel 4 made its archaeology series Down to Earth, it used computer-generated images to fill in the gaps. Alex Lester now investigates.
We've seen high-grade computer graphics used to illustrate such diverse visual delights as pop videos, vehicle and building design, defence training and flight simulators. But such technology now has a new application, or is it? Archaeology. I'm at Imagic in London's Covent Garden, who are involved in making an archaeological series with Thames Television for Channel 4 called Down to Earth. Let's ask the producer, David Wilson, who came first then, archaeologist or television producer?
I don't think people in archaeology are using technology quite sophisticated, but they do have AutoCAD systems for building buildings that they've dug out of the ground, for logging finds, for correlating what they've discovered with other discoveries. When we started Down to Earth, what we wanted was to find some way of getting across to people where you have a very dull excavation and you want to show people quite what was there. You could do it with this very easily, and you can do it in lots of different scales. And because it's electronic, you can lay it into live action film of the dig itself.
What did the archaeologists think when you showed them it?
I think they were surprised by seeing all their information put together in one place and made into a kind of event where normally it's in packets of speciality. I think they were also surprised because they deal in very old things, and what we created or creating is things that are new. So when you dig up a mosaic, you dig up something where all the colours are faded, but when it was made, it was very brightly coloured, equally wall paintings. So I think that must be. It's not that they thought that it's inaccurate. It's just that we've taken the time away.
Robin Vincent, you're technical director here at Imagic. What equipment are you using to produce these graphics?
Well, we use Silicon Graphics Personal Iris workstations to do the model building and the animation planning. For the rendering, which is a part of the process whereby you take the computer model, the wireframe if you like, and convert it to a fully shaded image, is done on a larger machine. Again, it's made by Silicon Graphics, but it has 4 computers inside it and therefore can do 4 times as much work.
Is this system your creation from a kit of parts?
Well, it is in a sense. I mean, these items are available off the shelf, but I chose particular pieces of equipment which I thought suited our requirements here.
What are the difficulties involved in making archaeological models?
Well, the main difficulty is there's very little to go on. With other things such as racing cars or something like that, you can tend to get plans or photographs. Of course, with archaeological sites, the evidence is very scant, and so that's the main difficulty. There's not much to go on.
Isn't that a plus point as well, in that archaeologists can't turn around to you and say, excuse me, but you're wrong?
Well, I think it is, in a sense, although, of course, people, when they see the results, will inevitably disagree about whether it was like that or whether it wasn't like that. This is an example of an animation that we have done, which is a recreation of a Roman villa at Stanek. The system uses a technique called ray tracing, which actually does a physical simulation of all the rays of light in the scene, calculating the reflections from the surface and the transparencies of objects and so on. And you can see, for example, in the floor we've made slightly reflected, so you can see the textures on the walls reflected in the floor.
What limitations are there to the effects that you can produce?
Well, ultimately, you're only limited by the imagination of the animator. Of course, there are physical limitations, such as memory and disk space and computer speed, but in the end, you're really only limited by the imagination.
Well, how long will it be before you push this entire system aside and get another one, then?
Well, that's difficult to say. We're very happy with it. Silicon Graphics, who we buy our machines from, enable us to upgrade the machines all of the time, so we do see them as having quite a long lifetime. The software, which is the other key feature, again, is being updated all of the time, and so you get new features and so on. So we see a fairly healthy lifetime.
I think it's very useful for showing you something that you can't get to, and particularly things that you can't get to emotionally or imaginatively, but a computer can bring it out. And it's not just archaeology that's useful for, I would have thought science, biology, anything like that, where the ways we use to find things out aren't the ways that we naturally use to see things. And I think that's what it's good for, that you can take information that's actually rather disparate and create a whole out of it.
Well, the people at Imagic, they're digging into new areas of computer graphics. If you'd like to watch the fruits of their labours, on Channel 4 next Tuesday at 8 o'clock, you can see the third part in that programme, Down to Earth. Well, in this week's benchmark slot, Dave Biggins casts his eye over a couple of punchy desktop machines, the Walters G2 and the Prism TriStar 286i.
I always like to see a neat design. It suggests that the designer has a clear and logical mind. This is evident in Prism's TriStar 286i. It's an Intel 286-based desktop PC with a small footprint and a sturdy metal frame. The system supplied to us came with 4 megabytes of RAM, one 3.5-inch floppy drive, and a 40 megabyte IDE type internal hard disk. Getting into the system couldn't be easier. There are 3 screws at the back and 2 down each side. Inside is a neat and tidy motherboard that's nevertheless packed with features. All of the peripheral devices, the display controller, the disk controllers, 2 serial and 1 parallel communications ports, and the mouse and keyboard ports are interfaced direct to the motherboard. It includes, for example, the large Paradise PVGA chip, but the board itself remains easy to reach and, if necessary, remove. There are 4 RAM expansion slots, in this case fully occupied, able to hold up to 4 megabytes of onboard RAM. Next to these slots is the empty socket for the optional Intel 80287 Maths coprocessor. And just beside this, if you look closely, you can see a small jumper. This annoys me. As a point of principle, I don't believe that users should be subjected to jumper switches, dip switches and the like. In this case, the jumper switch has to be configured correctly for the precise combination of coprocessor and clock speed that's actually installed. The floppy disk controller can support up to 2 3.5-inch floppy disks. In this system, only one is actually installed, but there's space between it and the 40 megabyte Western Digital hard disk for a second floppy. By having all the interfaces on the motherboard, the 4 free expansion slots are genuinely free. These are mounted horizontally on the 16-bit AT expansion bus. In some machines, these are mounted too close together to allow air circulation for cooling, but in this case there seems to be ample room, except for the lowest slot, which only just clears the 286 processor and the RAM chips on the motherboard. Any installed boards would of course need to be removed if you subsequently decided to add a coprocessor or increase the system's memory. The Walters G2 system is a 286 based standard AT compatible desktop PC. But the first thing you notice about this system is its size. It's a surprisingly large box for what is only a mid-range, indeed compared to the newer 386 and 486 based computers, low-range PC. It's a no-frills chunky box with the lid held in place by 5 screws at the rear. Removing these and the lid explains the size. It has no less than 7 expansion slots placed vertically. 5 are 16-bit and 2 are 8-bits. The physical arrangement demands a minimum height to the system that's greater than that of the increasingly popular horizontal arrangement, and the large number of slots again demands greater width to the system box than those with fewer slots. But do you need so many slots? In this case, the answer is clearly yes. Only the keyboard is interfaced directly to the motherboard. The monitor is interfaced by its own VGA board. All of the other peripherals use a multi-purpose card. This controls the disk drives and provides the communications ports at the rear of the system. The comms ports include 2 serial, 1 9 and 125 pin, a parallel port, a mouse interface and a games port. Although there are only 2 cards installed, they're so arranged and have been so installed at the factory as to leave only 2 free slots for the user, one 8-bit and one 16-bit. The multi-purpose card needs only 1 expansion slot, but 3 back panel slots. Note that the factory has provided a dummy 8th access slot on the back panel that could have been used, but the assembler has ignored it. As the arrangement stands, this card actually takes up 4 slots, when it only really needs to take 2. Now the user can of course move everything along, but the simple fact is that he shouldn't have to, and indeed Walters have actually painted over the screws to make it even harder. The 2 most obvious reasons for placing controllers on cards are to reduce production costs, this has worked, Walters is one of the low-cost manufacturers, and to reduce the overall size of the motherboard. This too has worked, but it's hardly necessary, since the overall size of the box could take a motherboard of twice the size. What about good points? Well, the motherboard has a socket for an optional 287 coprocessor. It's fairly well positioned and easy to reach. It's hidden by the disk cables, but it's accessible without having to physically remove any expansion cards. And there's also good scope for storage expansion. The 3.5-inch floppy drive is held vertically, leaving space for another 2 5.25-inch drives above the existing hard disk. The disk controller is able to handle a maximum of 2 hard disks and 2 floppy disks. But when all is said and done, this Walters system won't win any design accolades. It is, after all, only a 286-based system, and there's little demand for massive storage on low processing power. And putting a tiny motherboard into a large box is frankly a waste of space. The Walters G2 is a good all-round performer, with quite good performance, particularly in the random access disk tests, making it suitable for small database applications. However, its processing speed is a little slower than the Prism, and I probably wouldn't choose it for processing-intensive applications such as a spreadsheet, unless I was going to fit a 287. The Prism is a good fast system that stands up well against the other players in the 286 market, including fairly fast machines such as the little Carry 1. Its random access disk performance is a touch slow, but its good processing and display performance mean that it delivers as much throughput as just about any other 286 system on the market.
Well, a view of the desktop world there with our very own Dave Biggins. Well, last week, magazine publisher EMAP closed 3 titles and sold another one, a further indication that the fortunes of the computer publishing industry are perhaps in decline. In today's Face-to-Face, we ask Mike Dash, magazine's editor of the UK Press Gazette, is the party over for the computer magazines?
Mike, welcome to Computer Channel this morning. Well, obviously, taking Ken's point, is this as a bubble burst in a way? Is the EMAP closures a really sign of an early chop by the other computer publishers, do you think?
Well, I think the simple answer to that is yes. To put it in context, the magazine industry as a whole is in a horrible recession at the moment. There have been almost 50 closures in the last 5 months. 5 of those have been computer magazines. EMAP's closed down 3. A lot of people were surprised it didn't close down more titles. And one managing director of a publishing company I spoke to this week said that up to a third of the 100 or so business computer titles that are being published could go, and no one would even notice that they were missing.
So why are they closing them then?
Well, basically because they're all dependent on advertising revenues. There's only a handful of titles that have got subscription or cover price income. Therefore, they depend on advertising to make their money, and there's no advertising around anymore. The display sector down 20%, recruitment almost 50% year on year. Although last year was an exceptional year for advertising revenues, obviously it's very difficult, given those sort of fall-offs, for people to sustain their publishing operations as they were.
Is that merely a symptom of the recession, though, or is there more to it than that?
I think on the whole it is purely a symptom of the recession. I mean, the computer industry as a whole I doubt is being as badly affected as many other sectors of the market. And I think that really you've just got to look at the economy, the fact that people can't afford to employ the same number of people, and that they're not advertising for the same number of staff.
Obviously, there are a vast range of different types of magazine around. I mean, what sort of readers are they trying to pull with their magazines?
Well, you've really got to split the market into 2 broad sectors, I think. There's the business titles, which are aimed largely at management, the marketing people and so on. And there are the more technical titles who go to the programmers, the analysts and so on. On the whole, I think it's perhaps going to be the management titles that suffer worse, not least because the management themselves are getting too busy to read some of these magazines. They're too busy trying to save their own companies to bother with the more peripheral titles they perhaps skimmed through in the past.
Are there any other forms of revenue, though, that these magazines should be having? Obviously, they're completely reliant upon advertising and recruitment revenue. Surely, though, then, would this market trend into perhaps more paid-for titles, do you think?
Well, you would have thought that they would be trying to do that, but it's a very difficult market to crack. A lot of the free titles are going to 30, 40, 50,000 people. It's virtually impossible to set up a paid-for title which is going to give you the same number of readers, and therefore you're much less attractive to the advertisers if you're delivering only a small number. Even if you can say to them, someone is actually reading my magazine, we know because they want to pay for it.
Advertisers, though, even though the spend may be down, still have to get their message across. What vehicles do you think are they using now to do that?
Well, of course, increasingly they're going to the market-leading titles. They're the ones who can still offer the right number of readers, and are probably the ones that are still being read with some attention. We're talking about titles like Computer Weekly, Which Computer, which are very well known. They're brand leaders, and they're not going to suffer too badly. It's the niche titles, the sort that EMAP actually closed down, that are really feeling the pain at the moment.
Why do they launch niche titles?
Well, at the beginning and middle 80s, of course, the computer press was the boom sector. Everyone was keen to get into it. There were a lot more computer people around. A lot of markets open to be exploited that had never existed before. And a lot of publishers launched a lot of titles that competed with not only other publishers, but also with their own titles to protect their share of the advertising market. And, of course, it's these magazines that are now being either merged together or closed down altogether now.
How easy is it to target your reader, if you like?
I think it's actually quite difficult. I mean, it's certainly possible to get the names, the job titles, the addresses and so on that you need to get the magazine into the right hands. What is very difficult is to prove to the advertisers that they're actually reading your magazine. On the management side particularly, you might be getting 12 or 15 titles a week on your desk, and you're not going to read all of those with any degree of attention. Apart from things like reader reply cards and so on, it's very, very difficult to prove that anyone is reading your magazine, and that, of course, is confusing to advertisers, and it's confusing the market as a whole.
Well, how on earth, then, do the advertisers decide which magazine to advertise in if the information that they need is so scant?
They go for the titles that they know, and that, again, is the market leaders, the magazines that have been around for a long time. They come from the large companies, EMAP, VNU, Reed, and they feel that they can depend on those to a certain extent. But it is a hit-and-miss business.
How do they view the editorial in these magazines?
I think that on the whole, the magazine's editorial is pretty strong. In a market that has this many titles in it, you can't afford to be led by the advertisers. They soon see through that, and the companies like Reed and like VNU have got a reputation to protect. They're not going to publish any old rubbish. They do feel quite strongly that they must go for quality. This can be demonstrated quite easily by looking at VNU, which had a very serious strike by its journalists at the turn of the year. They lost quite a large proportion of their staff. The people were out on strike for months, and the management were running the magazines, and there was a substantial fall-off in quality, obviously, on those titles. And it didn't take long for that to knock on to the advertisers, they started to pull out to advertise in other magazines, and VNU hasn't really recovered yet. It's maybe 75% back to its old strength, and it will take a while to regain its ground in that market.
Obviously, you know, the publishers are now trying to run leaner ships in a way, and obviously cutting numbers of journalists being employed and everything else. Is it possible to run a small operation? I mean, some of these magazines, the EMAC, for example, had one person on them, or basically the editor and one production member of staff. Are they able to maintain quality of editorial with such a low number of people working on the magazine?
I think it's possible so long as the magazine is a specialist one and the editor is himself a specialist, obviously, in the area he's covering. The magazine which EMAP sold, 3D, was run with a staff of 5, of whom 3 were editorial. They've now going to be running it with a staff of 4, 2 editorial people, 2 advertising people. And the impression I get is that they can probably still do quite a good job. What they've done is to switch it from a monthly to a bi-monthly schedule, not particularly to give them more time to write it, but actually to help consolidate their advertising position. And that indicates to me that the editorial strengths can still be there, even with a small team, if the team know what they're doing.
Mike Dash, magazine's editor of UK Press Gazette, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Ken.
Difficult times for the computer magazine industry. Well, in today's Viewpoint, Chris Long gives us the benefit of his colourful comment on IBM's new PC2s. Are they simply too little, too late?
By now you'll probably have heard about the latest addition to IBM's PS2 stable, and it marks IBM's first serious foray into the 486 market. Certainly it's about time. In the old days, IBM would lead the PC market by being the first to launch the new technology. Indeed, it was creating it. Companies would watch with bated breath and react accordingly. Then, for some unknown reason, Big Blue seemed to step down from its commanding position and play the waiting game. The first 80386 was launched by either Compaq or ALR. It depends on whose press release you read. And even diminutive British manufacturer Apricot managed to be the first with the 486. Throughout this, IBM was bringing up the rear, launching its PS2 equivalents months or even years after everyone else. Given its clout, this was an odd situation for IBM to be in. IBM invented the PC. How could they have let everyone else steal a march on them? It was probably a surprise. Traditionally, IBM has had its markets to itself. The mainframe market was split between a few major players, and IBM took the lion's share. But the PC market was different. IBM had opened up the inside of the PC for the rest of the world to copy, and copy it they did, in big numbers. So much so that in 1987 IBM launched its PS2 range, which it hoped would re-establish it in the personal computer market. Well, the results are questionable. People buy PS2s all right, but why? Is it because of the arguably better technology, or because it comes from IBM? Rather than ponder the imponderable, let's look at the new machines. The PS2 Model 90 and 95 are 486 PCs, thus proving incontrovertibly that IBM was awake when Intel released the 486 chip. The interesting part of the announcement was the portable, the P75. It has a gas plasma display, a very large hard disk, a 486 chip, and weighs 21 pounds. At 21 pounds, it's not what you call a particularly portable. In fact, at 21 pounds, it probably has more use as a bodybuilding device. Why is it the world's biggest computer company can't make a portable to match the likes of Toshiba and Compaq? Not as though they don't have the resources. It goes back to IBM's approach. Everything at IBM seems to be built around their it's our ball, it's our ballpark, and it's our rules attitude. It's the sort of attitude that makes it okay to release its first proper 486 something like 18 months after everybody else. Although IBM is number one, its number oneness has been under siege for a while. And while it fails to react to the market with anything approaching speed and alacrity, it will never regain the ultra-strong position it used to have. Times have changed and moved on. If IBM don't take up the challenge, they'll get left even further behind. Given current trading conditions, it's not such a good idea to be last out of the trap.
Well, that's all we have time for this morning. I hope you'll join us on Tuesday for our regular dossier programme. Ken will be in the chair then with his second programme on mobile communications. Advising you how to plan for the technology and evaluate the services it has to offer will be Ian White, editor of the monthly magazine Mobile Business, Steve Herndon, director of engineering at Cellnet, and Rob Wilson of BIS Applied Systems. If you'd like to receive the programme, then call Nick Bancroft at the computer channel on 071 627 6771, 071 627 6771.
And the IT headlines again. IBM, Microsoft, Tandy, Fujitsu and Zenith have clubbed together to form a new multimedia standard called Windows M. The European Commission has unveiled its long-awaited green paper to liberalise the satellite communications market, and RACOR chairman Sir Ernest Harrison says he'll lead a management buyout of the group's electronics division.
I'd just like to repeat that number for you. It's 071 730 2222, not the number I read through earlier. 071 730 2222. Meanwhile, though, that's all from us at the Computer Channel for today. Don't forget to join us on Wednesday for a special programme looking at the BCS Professional Development Scheme. We've just heard, by the way, a bit of late news. BBC News has reported just a few minutes ago that Margaret Thatcher has resigned. Well, you heard it first on the Computer Channel. Thank you for watching this morning. Goodbye.